Heidi Popp is a solution-based wayshower, currently in the Los Angeles area. She is a childhood experiencer of the paranormal who has studied and participated in the disclosure communities for decades. Her passion for entertainment took her through 30 successful years in the motion picture industry. Her career and successful small business allowed her to find the others within Hollywood. Eventually, she began hosting gatherings, workshops, and events for fellow like minds. As of March 2020, she officially walked away from the film set life to focus on her children and to normalize the paranormal. She currently is a lead educator at a learning enrichment center for homeschoolers in LA. Guiding our youth and protecting our future is Heidi's daily mission offline. Still a fan of speaking to crowds, she can be found interviewing fellow waysharers and sharing high vibrational synapses on her podcasts and vlogs. Heidi's information can be found in the description box below. Well, welcome to the Nexus, Heidi. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me, Professor.
I've been wanting to have you on for a long time, and it's because of the number of conversations that we've been engaged with, and whether interactively on your show or on somebody else's shows, and in the group Gab known as the Geezer Geeks, of which you are a geezer geek gal. And we have had a number of very synchronistic and I think beautifulness of the vibe of how we just kind of tune into the same things, which is based on frequencies and vibration and energy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And a lot of stories going around in various fields, from the ufology to the paraphology to the who knows what EIEIO phology, and there's just a lot of air being sucked out of the oxygen being sucked out of the air of the conversations with all these things. And I, for one, feel, and I think you are of this same perspective, you got to get down to the personal experience. You got to get down to the actual evidence that you have of your personal experience for yourself.
Yep.
And does that translate to the experience and the relationships and the vibe that you share with others? And I think you are one of the most authentic expressions of that I know.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That means a lot, because that's what I'm trying to put out there. Doesn't matter about the growth or the likes in a way. It's like I'm still walking the walk, talking the talk. I'm out there in the 3D doing what I say I'm doing. Not just talking about wanting to do it. I'm doing it.
Well, and I think that, that's where this, the focus of our conversation today is on this concept of superhumans versus normal humans. And I am one of the thought that the distinction between the two have been kind of used, abused, maybe even hijacked, because the majority of what I see as what people classify as superhuman is actually the latent, inherent nature, habit, and characteristics of our consciousness. And some people have, a much more intense, acute expression of that than others. You can liken it to an athlete in a particular sport. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm 5'10" on a good day, but I am not getting out there with LeBron James. It's just not going to happen. The frequency and vibration of his expression is just way beyond what mine is in that particular skill set.
In that particular skill set. But you'd run hoops around him with a lot of other things. I worked with him, and not to my taste.
Well, and that's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down. But
another tangent.
I'm just using it as an analogy, as a compare and contrast.
Of course.
And I think, from what I know of what you're doing, you left one previous iteration of life and transferred and transitioned into another.
Yes.
Can you give a brief description of you went from here and now you're here?
Yes. And I think the first term, I guess all of it would be it being of service to others. But I was in motion picture for quite a long time. I was in front of the camera and then I was behind the camera. And for the last 15 years, it was behind, but I was in constant service to others. I was a union crew girl, but I was basically like the snack girl on set. So I was taking care of everybody. And it was very draining. It was very taxing. It was very laborious. It's very fit.
Right.
But I loved it. I loved it. However, when the world flipped on 2020 and that ended for me, it was one of those, you know, it felt imbalanced. I saw how imbalanced it was. And then I also saw my two children, who I'm a mother. I was like, oh, there they are. I just kept putting them in this great school, like, okay, they're taken care of. But it's no, I want to take care of them. I'm going to become the primary caregiver here. And so that's how I flipped my world. And really because of the giant, because he did help oversee the house and became head of household. And I could take that downtime to become their primary caregiver and then focus on their educational journey. As the world was changing, even the safe space I put them in, I just didn't adhere to how they were reopening. Let's say that. It was just, I was like, well, this isn't in alignment with what I thought they stood for. So I realized we have to create something new here. And so I went into the education of children. Now, it is like 25 or maybe even 30 years after the fact. I did go to university for early childhood education to become a teacher. There was a background of academia there. However, what I saw, what was happening in the school systems in the late 90s, I just backed out and went right into motion picture. I was not there to defend the children or protect them. And what I'm speaking of is, when the medical mafia came in, let's say that, I was like, well, this isn't child-led learning that I was hoping for, because I was very much raised like that. I had a mother that really, she helped me develop my imagination, my creativity. I had a lot of child-led childhood. It was really for the betterment of me. And it was a very, inspiring childhood. And I thought that would be really neat to inspire a lot of kids at once. And then I realized the control that either state-run schools or the academic agendas that were out there, I was like, well, no, that's not what I thought it was. And I was already kind of making some waves in motion picture. So I'm like, I'll just go over here. And so when everything changed just 4 years ago, I was like, well, I got to go with what resonates and what feels right. And I just I put all my chips in on the education for my kids. And that's when I said, well, I'm definitely not going back to the old systems. I'm lawfully not allowed to because of all these things that happen in California regarding mandates and medical choice. So I'm like, let's create. And as I was creating, it was pretty overwhelming. But you said to go short, but I'm saying more things.
No, you're
Okay,
good. You're good. This is all good.
Well, as I was creating, I realized this is overwhelming. So I had other people educate them, but I'm wanting to bring in, Qigong and meditation, try to bring in the woo a little bit. And I'm like, I just wish there was a place like this. Well, it turns out because I shifted my focus, my social circle shifted as well. And I started finding other families and parents who felt the same way I did. And that's when it was like the speakeasies came out of the hangouts and who's going where and who's doing what. And I found this beautiful learning enrichment center that stayed open and really is a child-led learning educational journey for children. And I just aligned with it right away. I got my children enrolled and put them there for a year while I took a step back and began podcasting some more and did things like that. But then I'm like, I got to get in there. I want to help. So it was like, put me in, coach. So I started being an assistant. And then within a year, I was given my own classroom. So now I'm about to start my second year with my own class. And it's the same kids I had last year. We grow together. So academically, you grow with the child, which I'm a huge fan of, big proponent of. And it's a bunch of homeschoolers.
Isn't that similar to what you were saying about your childhood?
Yes,
You had
exactly.
that consistent, right?
Yep. That grew with me, that adapted with me, that let me expand when it was safe and when I felt ready to expand. And so I feel I'm more of a mentor guardian now in that sense. And my children are thriving there. As with any business, there's, that can go toe to toe with so many things that, I'd love to help do more there as far as a business standpoint, but I see that it's a perfect either stepping stone or it's progress. Like it's something, it's happening. There's a creation happening that I'm really excited about. And it could be taken in different levels too, different ways and all over. And I think it is, because I've been speaking more online, I'm meeting people who like on the East Coast, they have a similar sort of learning center, and Florida, Texas, all these states are starting to branch off and do something different in that sense. And that's having a child-led learning facility. It's really under the homeschool umbrella, so they really don't have state mandates on them. There's a lot more freedom. They do believe in sovereign civilians of free will. But what I'm finding in this particular place, which is in Los Angeles, you bring all walks of life, but I am starting to interact too with those with innate psychic abilities. And, I'm starting to run into some of those children, but I'm also noticing, which I know we'll talk in length about, but to me, all children, all humans have the ability to become superhuman. So I'm sure we'll tap into it more. But that was my bridge, motion picture into teaching. There you go.
So the curriculum at the learning center you're at is, I think you mentioned before, it's kind of a Rudolf Steiner, Waldorf kind of model.
Yes, it's a model after Steiner for sure. It's not like a fully accredited Waldorf brick and mortar school, but the staff, the admin, we do admire Steiner's philosophy. He did believe in child-led learning education and the mind, body, will of the child. And it's really maintaining and amplifying the soul of the child. And that just resonated huge with me. I was like, okay, this is the woo too, without, really knowing it's the woo. And everything, what I love too, it's very developmentally appropriate in age, because all the old systems are very rushed. You're rushing, you're dumbing down, you're numbing, you're conforming, you're putting them in boxes, whereas this is the slow bloom. And you can't deny the results. I'll just say that.
Well, oh God, there's so many. You just dropped a couple of nuggets on there, and now I'm going to go look for a particular piece which I think speaks directly to what you're saying about the way in which education has been kind of hijacked.
Yes.
And that's really one of the things that is created this, contributed at a minimum, and maybe been a major catalyst to this delineation of super versus normal human.
Absolutely.
Because
big part of it.
There's been a repackaging of our little carbon-based units that we are creating and trying to, in the old view, create free labor.
That's it. Work for the man, yeah. Conform and fall in line. And that's old school. This is Rockefeller. This is, Rothschild. Yeah. This is old school. All those rabbit holes. But yeah. And then when I saw when the medical came in, and seeing lights get turned off, and I was just dumbfounded. I go, whoa, where are we going here? But not having any children of my own, I was in my 20s, it was kind of all about me. I'm like, oh, I'll just go over here then. That doesn't look appealing anymore. Now I'm just like dug my heels in, especially when my children were born, and I saw the human interference on their spirit, on their soul that was happening. And it was so like I was out of the norm for wanting to protect their spirit. And I'm like, well, this is really backwards. So I really started digging my heels in just to protect them even more. And I'm like, we have a big problem here. And I'm like, oh, this has been a slow drip of an involvement, underneath, behind the shadows. People weren't noticing all this creep in. And now there's such a stronghold that I feel like, yes, those systems have to collapse, but more than anything, we just have to stop participating and walk away. And because as long as there's going to be someone that believes that old model is the way to do things, then it's going to continue to exist. So we have to take it on over there.
Yeah, to me, this is, we've heard we've talked about, you mentioned that, since the scamdemic popped out, to me, that was clearly orchestrated, planned, and it was it was a great. I give them an A+ on effort, on packaging, because there is nothing more motivating to humans than a silent, deadly killer.
Yep.
So the fear factor is like, bring it on. So they did great there, but
Yeah.
they've just stumbled at one after another of the execution and the follow up. And now here we are 4+ years later, I guess, and we're looking at all the data and we're
Yeah.
going, okay, you clearly can't hide the bullshit that you just put everybody through anymore.
Yes. Yes. And I think because there's a huge population that's really quiet right now. And because of the choices they made and the segregation they were putting everybody through. But then there's people such as myself who got a little more empowered going, wow, not only did I not bow down, but as a parent, I showed my children what standing up for yourself means and how to do it with grace and dignity, and to not really. I started to cause a scene. I started to march. I started to do those things, and I got a little sicker. And I'm like, we have to just create our beings. We have to create something new. So watching us go through that whole movement and to find out where we came out at the end, now we're just standing there welcoming these waves of people going, I think I made a mistake. It's like,
Yeah,
I got
isn't
you.
it true? Have you run into anybody yet that
Yeah.
didn't take the jab and is remorseful that they didn't?
Absolutely not. Quite the opposite.
Right?
Quite the opposite.
So I went through that same thing as soon as it came out. In fact, the last show that I did on the previous iteration of the Nexus was December, I think I did it New Year's Eve or Christmas of 2019. So it was just before this shit was about to roll out. And the title of the show was The Knowledge Apocalypse, the end of the curated narrative. Because my observation of pattern recognition and trends analysis pointed that, over the last 2.5 decades, I've been deep into exploring woo. And it actually goes back over 3 decades when I became a shiatsu practitioner in Southern California in 1985. And I had to learn traditional Chinese medicine, kinesiology, all the massage techniques. And shiatsu is Japanese for acupressure.
Yes, it's my favorite.
Me and needles, we're not compatible at all. And so, but using the same meridians and the same points, you can still achieve some amazing effects. So that was my burst away from the allopathic model. Because I realized that all of that was just had way too many holes in it.
Yep. It's just
So
money.
Yeah, I mean, follow the money pox. Remember the K is silent in the monkey pox, right?
Yeah. That's a good one.
So when this is my observation and what I was doing in my trend analysis made me do this show saying, basically, everything we've been told is about to be revealed as being bullshit. And it's across everything.
Yeah.
It's not
all industry.
Just medicine, it's education, it's the academia institutions, the financial institutions, the governance and administrative institutions. It's all broke. So we started to hear, the people talking about the great reveal, the great rethink, the great reset. To me, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you, you and I are working on what I think is about to happen, which is the great reimagining.
Ooh, I like that name. It's my next tattoo. Yes, that's what it, yeah. The creation of the
because
new.
we now have the opportunity through all these experiences, all this knowledge. I mean, when they unleashed the net of knowledge back in the 90s, and I was right in the middle of that, I don't think that they, whoever they are, thought that it would get away from them, but it did.
Yes, that's true.
And with the releasing of the beast of knowledge to the wild, people like you and me and all the folks that we talk to online in our shows and just our shorts, right?
Uh-huh.
We're
Mhm.
we're all looking at it going, yeah, there's dumpster fires everywhere. There's train wrecks everywhere. There are lunatics everywhere.
Yeah.
The masses of the mental and mobs, well, it's on display right now in Chicago, as a matter of fact,
Yes.
without getting into that realm, but just as a general observation. So I think what's happened in a lot of ways, and I believe in this basic model of philosophy ontology, is that we are here because we chose to be here. And we chose to be here and now to be a part of not only the great reveal, which is the fact that everything is bullshit, and then transform that into the great reimagining. So,
Hmm.
what would it be if we were dealing with just the facts, not somebody's truth, which is basically a fact that somebody's wrapped their shit around?
Yes. That's the authentic. Yes. Yes. I know. I'm like, which tangent do I go on this one?
I could see two of them trigger. Go pick one and go.
I know. I'm like, well, as much as you were saying, I remember 90s and I remember the web coming out. I'm an Oregon Trail girl. um, but the information war that's out there, you're getting we've quadrupled, even more than that, the charlatans out there. As much as we actually had the opportunity in 2020 to all be stuck at home and research ourselves, they're like, uh-oh, they're finding out things. And then more junk gets thrown in. But this is where I get excited, where, I'm not surprised you dabbled in the woo and studied Eastern medicine, all that. We've been taking care of our meat suits and lining up enough that we can discern the bullshit, as well as, and that comes with the information we come across and the people we meet. And these communities are flooded with the charlatans right now who just have they're storytellers and not a lot of sauce to back it up. And wasn't that the whole thing in 2016 or 2018 to 2020? Like, where's the sauce? Where's the proof? Where's the proof? And here come all these proofs and these drops and things, but show me more, show me more. And then you realize it doesn't matter what I show you, someone is not going to be able to dissect or discern or whatever. So I honestly, it comes to a point where you're watching this war of information go on. And you're like, you guys fight over there and chew on the fat. I'm going to build over here and create, because, after a while, they're just swirling in this information, like circle jerk of egos. And
I call it a tsunami of shit, of mental gymnastics and fortification.
like that one. What's that acronym? There's some merch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's exhausting, because then even online, it's like insert opinion, insert opinion, insert. I'm like, well, but who closes the laptop and goes out and does something about it? Who takes their stories and their experience and then goes out and goes, well, I'm going to flip it. I'm going to flip it light out there in the world, no matter what the people around me are thinking and feeling. I'm just going to go do. And that's where this percentage gets really small. And the last few years, the world has allowed us to see that. If you're tuned in, I guess, you can really find who is doing the work and who's just talking, who's a talking head, another talking head. And then it goes, well, who's an infiltrated talking head? Who's an alphabet agency talking head? Like it just keeps going and going. And then I just go click and I close the laptop and I go focus on the kids. it's yeah. That one, there's a couple tangents there, but I see what you're saying, especially resonate with, everyone taking the time and having an opportunity to research for themselves. And then even that got overwhelming and taken over. And, well, I found this information and your information is wrong because I got this information. All I know is if you have a belief system, no matter what it is, you could think cockroaches or kings and queens in royalty or something, you're going to find that information online now. So it's kind of like you have to back your stuff up with human experience, with insight, with your own truths, and not care what other people think, but also pay attention to who can't back their stuff up.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, it's all speculation.
Yes.
Nobody has any kind of fact other than what they have in their own personal experience, and then how they can express that in a way that is either demonstrable at a minimum, has some kind of credibility. And one of there was a couple of things that when I watched the whole shutdown thing, I'm sitting back going, okay, you guys are really going for the mother load here. Let's see how this works. So a couple of months into it, I was just outside of Durango. And I said, well, they're saying don't go anywhere, don't go do anything, stay in your room until we tell you it's okay to come out.
Yeah.
Get in there and do some navel gazing, eat
Call
your
tattle on
Cheetos
your
and watch
neighbors.
Netflix.
Tattle on your
Right,
neighbors
yeah.
if they have more than 5 people. Yeah. Yeah.
So I went to downtown Durango and I was like, I looked around and I thought, wow, I've never seen it this clean. Aside from not being, full of people. But, everybody got all paranoid about you got to wipe and spray everything down and wash it down and pressure wash this and shovel that and sweep this. And it was like, wow, I don't think this town has been this clean since they probably made it.
It's like, finally, someone
So,
cleaned it up.
yeah, so I thought, well, there's a benefit to what's
there's a
going on
positive.
here.
Mm-hmm.
And another benefit was, because of the nature of this silent, deadly killer being basically focused around hygiene, people started that hadn't ever and probably needed to relook at hygiene, and they started to clean themselves up a little bit.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
You started to be a little bit more conscious about, you got to keep stuff clean because this thing's silent, it's invisible, and it could be anywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
But these plexiglass
it was such
separators will protect
funny.
us.
Yeah.
And don't forget to put something on your face and breathe all of the crap that you're supposed to be exhaling for a reason. Yeah. I mean, just the illogic of that just was phenomenally amazing to me.
Yeah, we were living in a SNL skit.
Right. And now you still have, there's a few that are out there in the wild that are still wearing them.
Yep.
And they're even wearing them while they're driving in a car by themselves.
Yeah, with the windows rolled up.
And all that tells me is that there's some mental illness going on.
Yes.
That is the result of decades of programming.
Yep.
The whole concept of MK Ultra and the Mockingbird Project Mockingbird. I mean, which we just did a show with the Geezers where it was Polly Want a Cracker. And it was about the media. It's not legacy media. It's not lamestream media or mainstream media. It's Mockingbird media.
Mm-hmm.
Because all they do is repeat the same shit. And it's amazing how people don't pay attention to this tsunami of shit that's coming in as a data deluge. And none of the education that any of us have gone through, none of the mentorships. I think mentors, I know in my life, I had some awesome dudes that knocked me upside the noggin and went, dude, watch this and you'll learn. I went, oh, thank you very much for pointing that out.
Uh-huh.
So mentors are really important, but the system has been so corrupt for so long, and it's been hijacked, that it has created people that no longer know how to think. They only know what to think.
Yep. It was created that way. It was intended that way.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And to that, I want to play this short piece by Sir Ken Robinson.
Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are 2 reasons for it. The first of them is economic. People are trying to work out, how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that, given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating? How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out, how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization? How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which was if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that. And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not if the route to it marginalizes most of the things that you think are important about yourself. Some people say we have to raise standards as if this is a breakthrough. You know, like, really, yes, we should. Why would you lower them? You know, I mean, I haven't come across an argument that persuades me of lowering them. But raising them, of course we should raise them. The problem is that the current system of education was designed and conceived and structured for a different age. It was conceived in the intellectual culture of the Enlightenment and in the economic circumstances of the Industrial Revolution. Before the middle of the 19th century, there were no systems of public education. Not really. I mean, you could get educated by Jesuits, you know, if you had the money. But public education, paid for from taxation, compulsory to everybody and free at the point of delivery, that was a revolutionary idea. And many people objected to it. They said it's not possible for many street kids, working class children, to benefit from public education. They're incapable of learning to read and write, and why are we spending time on this? So there's also built into it a whole series of assumptions about social structure and capacity. It was driven by an economic imperative of the time, but running right through it was an intellectual model of the mind, which was essentially the Enlightenment view of intelligence. That real intelligence consists in the capacity for a certain type of deductive reasoning and a knowledge of the classics originally, what we come to think of as academic ability. And this is deep in the gene pool of public education, that there are really two types of people, academic and non-academic, smart people and non-smart people. And the consequence of that is that many brilliant people think they're not, because they've been judged against this particular view of the mind. So we have twin pillars, economic and intellectual. And my view is that this model has caused chaos in many people's lives. It's been great for some. There have been people who've benefited wonderfully from it. But most people have not. Instead, they suffer this. This is the modern epidemic, and it's as misplaced and it's as fictitious. This is the plague of ADHD. Now, this is a map of the incidence of ADHD in America, or prescriptions for ADHD. Don't mistake me here. I don't mean to say there is no such thing as attention deficit disorder. I'm not qualified to say if there is such a thing. I know that a great majority of psychologists and paediatricians think there is such a thing, but it's still a matter of debate. What I do know for a fact is it's not an epidemic. These kids are being medicated as routinely as we had our tonsils taken out, and on the same whimsical basis and for the same reason, medical fashion. Our children are living in the most intensely stimulating period in the history of the earth. They're being besieged with information and calls for their attention from every platform, computers, from iPhones, from advertising holdings, from hundreds of television channels. And we're penalizing them now for getting distracted. From what? You know, boring stuff at school, for the most part. It seems to me it's not a coincidence totally that the incidence of ADHD has risen in parallel with the growth of standardized testing. Now, these kids are being given Ritalin and Adderall and all manner of things, often quite dangerous drugs, to get them focused and calm them down. But according to this, attention deficit disorder increases as you travel east across the country. People start losing interest in Oklahoma. They can hardly think straight in Arkansas. And by the time they get to Washington, they've lost it completely. And there are separate reasons for that, I believe. It's a fictitious epidemic. If you think of it, the arts, and I don't say this exclusively of the arts, I think it's also true of science and of maths, but I say about the arts particularly because they are the victims of this mentality currently, particularly. The arts especially address the idea of aesthetic experience. An aesthetic experience is one in which your senses are operating at their peak, when you're present in the current moment, when you're resonating with the excitement of this thing that you're experiencing, when you are fully alive. An anesthetic is when you shut your senses off and deaden yourself to what's happening. And a lot of these drugs are that. We're getting our children through education by anesthetizing them. And I think we should be doing the exact opposite. We shouldn't be putting them asleep. We should be waking them up to what they have inside of themselves. But the model we have is this. I believe we have a system of education that is modeled on the interests of industrialism and in the image of it. I'll give you a couple of examples. Schools are still pretty much organized on factory lines, ringing bells, separate facilities, specialized into separate subjects. We still educate children by batches. You know, we put them through the system by age group. Why do we do that? You know, why is there this assumption that the most important thing kids have in common is how old they are? You know, it's like the most important thing about them is their date of manufacture. You know what I mean? Well, I know kids who are much better than other kids at the same age in different disciplines, you know, or at different times of the day, or better in smaller groups than in large groups, or sometimes they want to be on their own. If you're interested in the model of learning, you don't start from this production line mentality. It's essentially about conformity, and increasingly it's about that as you look at the growth of standardized testing and standardized curricula. And it's about standardization. I believe we've got to go in the exact opposite direction. That's what I mean about changing the paradigm. There was a great study done recently of divergent thinking. Published a couple of years ago. Divergent thinking isn't the same thing as creativity. I define creativity as the process of having original ideas that have value. Divergent thinking isn't a synonym, but it's an essential capacity for creativity. It's the ability to see lots of possible answers to a question, lots of possible ways of interpreting a question, to think what Edward de Bono would probably call laterally, to think not just in linear or convergent ways, to see multiple answers, not one. So, I mean, there are tests for this. I mean, one kind of cod example would be people might be asked to say, how many uses can you think of for a paperclip? One of those routine questions. Most people might come up with 10 or 15. People who are good at this might come up with 200. And they do that by saying, well, could the paperclip be 200 foot tall and be made out of foam rubber? You know, like, does it have to be a paperclip as we know it, Jim? You know. Now, there are tests for this, and they gave them to 1,500 people. This is in a book called Breakpoint and Beyond. And on the protocol of the test, if you scored above a certain level, you'd be considered to be a genius at divergent thinking. Okay? So my question to you is, what percentage of the people tested, of the 1,500, scored at genius level for divergent thinking? Now, you need to know one more thing about them. These were kindergarten children. So what do you think? What percentage at genius level? 80. 80, okay. 98%. Now, the thing about this was it was a longitudinal study. So they retested the same children 5 years later, ages of 8 to 10. What do you think? 50? They retested them again 5 years later, ages 13 to 15. You can see a trend here, can't you? Now, this tells an interesting story, because you could have imagined it going the other way, couldn't you? You start off not being very good, but you get better as you get older. But this shows two things. One is we all have this capacity, and two, it mostly deteriorates. Now, a lot of things have happened to these kids as they've grown up, a lot. But one of the most important things that happened to them, I'm convinced, is that by now they've become educated. You know, they've spent 10 years at school being told there's one answer, it's at the back. And don't look. And don't copy, because that's cheating. I mean, outside schools, that's called collaboration, you know, but inside schools. Now, this isn't because teachers want it this way. It's just because it happens that way. It's because it's in the gene pool of education. We have to think differently about human capacity. We have to get over this old conception of academic, non-academic, abstract, theoretical, vocational, and see it for what it is, a myth. Secondly, we have to recognize that most great learning happens in groups, that collaboration is the stuff of growth. If we atomize people and separate them and judge them separately, we form a kind of disjunction between them and their natural learning environment. And thirdly, it's crucially about the culture of our institutions, the habits of the institution and the habitats that they occupy.
I need to blast that. That was absolutely amazing. What he said.
That was, yeah,
Ditto.
that was some of the most concise, precise, and inclusive description of what is and why and what its problems are that I've seen, period.
So well done. And even the visual. Someone like me, because I learn differently than others. I like the visual, and that was fantastic. That should be required viewing for parents with school-age children because they have choices. Everybody has a choice. So
Well, and in some ways, and it
wow.
might be kind of not necessarily age specific, but I think kids should see this.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm going to show mine. Absolutely. That was so well done. That was fantastic. And that was all my little thoughts and talking points, by the way. And of course, even though we just talked raw in the beginning, I immediately went to the medical and the interference, the human interference, and then showing what we are doing. So that was my brain right there.
Well, now you know why I wanted to share that with
Yeah.
you in this conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's I find that you've got that we were talking earlier about the difference between complicated and complex, right? And complicated, in the way I look at the use of that word, that's what we do to things. That's what humans do to things. We make things complicated. The reality we inhabit is complex, but it's not complicated. It's got a lot of parts. It's got a lot of delineations, levels, distinctions, differentiations, all those things, but it's all connected. It's once you understand the fabric of reality and the way that energy, frequency, vibration expresses themselves, what their characteristics, natures, habits, the attributes, you look at it and you go, okay, now I can see how everything fits. I can see how this manifests this way and how this acts that way. But this education, this reimagining that we are a part of, that we're here to do. And I know that, people talk about star seeds and, the reincarnation. I prefer the term iteration because I think that we iterate, we don't reincarnate, because that kind of implies coming back as from what you were before and having some kind of link to it, which I think we do have. But that's on a realm of frequencies and the infinite field of frequencies that we barely even are aware of, let alone have any kind of knowledge or understanding about. So I think our frequency stamps iterate.
And makes sense.
We just kind of come back in another cycle and do something different, or, maybe we have some kind of karmic agreement, relationship, responsibility that we had in a previous iteration that we are going to take care of in the next with the other frequency stamps that we made those agreements with. But that's a long way of going around saying that we're here to do what we're doing right now. We're here to be a part of this great transformation, this transition from what was to what it should be. And I think that Ken's talk with the work of the RSA Animate, I just love the whiteboards.
I know. That was so good. Just a super quick side note. Have you heard of Hans Wilhelm? He does a whiteboard as well. I really love him. He's a little Swedish fella. Have you seen him? I just love him. But there's something about that whiteboard, man.
I'm old school whiteboard. I've got up here, I've got 8 feet by 8 by 4 foot whiteboard.
I got my whiteboard.
See, that's just yet another thing that we resonate with.
Yes.
So I think that it's really important to get people to understand why it is what it is right now. And just by showing that, you show the holes and the gaps and the kinks and all the things that are in the system that are clogging it and keeping it from being something that can actually add value to the way that people think about. It's not schooling, Mark Twain's famous quip of, I never let my schooling get in the way of my education.
Oh, yeah.
This whole school system, what we have right now, is complete crap. It's
Yeah.
broken from top to bottom.
Yeah. But even like what you just shown though, I think people can see it and retain it, but some people get lost in then fighting about that or just regurgitating what they're doing to us. It's like, okay. We got all the information. Now flip it, change it, do something. What are you going to do about it?
How do we fix it?
What?
Right.
Yeah, it's because there's so many talking heads right now. And some are very new to this. They're very new and they're going to dot connect and go, holy smokes, look what they're doing to the kids. And you're like, okay, you see the pattern. Now change, now do something. You know, you got to make action with this because we're in the information war where it's a lot of talking and passive information, but there's a select few doing action. And if we really want to expedite this process, we got to have more people doing some action. So that's why I really love that, because I know there's some that are still in old systems and it's like they see it, but they don't see the big picture and, oh, it's working for my kid. It's like, just give them the picture and maybe it'll activate something to do some action to make a change.
Well, and that's to me, whenever I do my observational analysis of what's going on, I start in the clouds. I get up 50,000 feet and look around and see the field. And there's so much, again, the tsunami of shit and the deluge of data that everybody's inundated with. Nobody's taught how to process that. I didn't get any training how to process this amount of information. It happened through osmosis, I guess, over time, constantly looking at it. Well, wait a minute, I heard that. Oh, what's this over here? Oh, shit, look at what's connected to that. And you have to be willing to let go of whatever that ego that you have.
Or programming, yeah.
That has been programmed. I think the ego, which has been, everybody says it's a derogatory word or you shouldn't have one or you need to clamp down on it. It's like, no, the ego is the self.
Yeah.
What's been programmed to the ego is what you're seeing come out, expressed as what you call ego.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I have to be mindful of when I use that because you're right. That's usually a fallback, but actually I'm trying to teach kids to be empowered by controlling and owning and strengthening their ego. So you're right. Oh, never mind.
Well, it's just a reframe of the words. People have got, it's just like judgment and you can't judge anything. It's like, well, judging is how our minds work. We make a judgment every time. You and I are making judgments as we're having this conversation.
Yeah, we're synchronizing synapses.
That's just how we work.
Yeah.
Right?
I do. I champion that too because parents are like, stop judging me. Other parents, I'm like, I'm assessing. We have to assess and understand this is safe. I mean, this is human nature. Judge a situation and react.
Yeah. And this whole thing about being offended, right?
Yeah.
You can't offend anyone. It's like, wait a minute. First of all, and if you're offended at something, it's because you have some unresolved internal issue with whatever has triggered you into being offended. When I turned 40, I lost an ego and I gained a purpose. And what I meant by ego is how people would react to me. I stopped caring about it as much. It wasn't the big thing about, oh, I got to be careful of what I'm saying because somebody might think that I'm, being an idiot or an asshole. And it's like, yeah, we all are at times. That's part of our nature and the characteristics as well. But I helped a friend who was an author who made a bunch of children's books called Indigo Dreams, and she had published them. And I said, Laura, you really need to do these as audiobooks. And this is in early 2005, somewhere around there. And so she said, really? I said, yeah, that's going to be a big deal. So we produced like 7 different books on audio. I produced it in my studio. And on the adult version, we did them for kids. I think the first one was 5 to 7, and then we did 8 to 13, and then we did teens, and then we did an adult version. And on the adult version, and I wrote the music and produced all of them, and we had various voice actors on the others, but I did the adult version. So it was Indigo Dreams Adult. Well, we put it on Amazon, and it went crazy, and the reviews were just off the charts. We were getting psychologists and counselors and all kinds of people going, I give this to all my patients. I
Well,
recommend this to everybody. Parents were going, I got this for me, but my daughters or my sons are listening to it.
huh.
So we were going, wow, this is great. We're making a difference, right? We're
hmm
helping people.
hmm
And then one day, Lori calls me up and says, have you seen Amazon reviews lately? And I said, no. And she says, you really need to go take a look.
Oh, no.
And some guy got on there and very eloquently ripped the entire thing a new one. He went on about how poor my voiceover was, the script was terrible, the production was bad, the music sucked. I mean, he just covered it all. And it wasn't nasty, it was very well written.
hmm
And I read it and I went, oh, well, there's a perspective that I didn't think about. And as I'm thinking about it, I kind of agree with it maybe on that point, right? And this is after like 50 or 100 awesome reviews. And this guy just ripped it. I went, okay. So I replied to him and I thanked him
Nice.
because I realized it wasn't at me personally. He didn't know who I was from Adam,
Okay.
right? He just knew that the work, whoever did the work, he had issues with.
hmm
And it didn't bother me. And Lori
That's
called me
so
and says, did you read it
amazing.
yet?
Yeah.
Did you read it? And I said, yeah. She says, what'd you think? I said, it's pretty damn good.
He's
She's
got some
like,
points.
what?
Wow, that's
Aren't you
awesome.
pissed? I said, no. You can't make something and expect it to resonate with everyone.
That's beautiful. And that person sounds very confident in their clear perspective. And that's
Yeah, it
and went
was
against the norm of 1,500 other things. That's pretty ballsy and
right.
yeah. Wow.
So to me, that ties back to helping to this point that Ken Robinson made in that video we just showed. The individual and what that individual, what makes that individual, what they resonate with, what puts wind in their sails and floats their boats. They're so different. Everyone is different. And the whole idea of this, and I don't want to get on this rant, I'll just say this and then we'll move on to the next one. But this whole thing about identity and the collective inclusion of a vast variety of identities is this major, serious mental fornication
Yeah.
of just nonsense. Because if you think about it, well, if you're really about identity, why aren't you working on making sure that the individual that is
Yes.
that identity
Yeah.
is the focus?
I think it's a sad attempt of trying to, like that whiteboard we saw, it's their attempt of going in the school, see, we're letting them be individuals as they take the same test and study the same information and answer the bell. But oh, no, if they're a cat, they're a cat. It's like, wait, I see what you did there. But that's not what we're talking about. That's not quite an individualized education. Yeah, very sad attempt. And more
And
segregation, more division, more fighting. Keep the people fighting, bread and circuses, yada, yada, the whole thing. Yeah. So,
isn't it interesting how the collective inclusion is really a segregation?
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And they hate segregation, but they do the exact same with these other words that they've
Yeah.
taken and hijacked and confused everybody with.
Yeah. Yep. They do it to themselves.
So I feel that I know, my personal perspective and speculation, that the work that you're doing, the path that you're on, the mission of purpose is what this great reimagining is, how it's going to happen, how it's going to unfold, because it is about the individual and it starts with the children.
Mm-hmm. I thank you for seeing that. And I feel the same. And I feel this is a mission. And I know there's so many others that are stepping into it as well. And that little graphic of the little meat suit unzipping and the child coming out with like music notes or whatever, the individual child, that's the goal. That's what we're doing. We're protecting them in a safe environment to just bloom and emerge and whatever that looks like to them and whatever skill set they have. And I think it almost helped not being in the education system for 30 years and being somewhere else and just developing my human instinct so that I can come back into it without the programming and without all that, and just the faith of, and as a mom to protect my kids, but just to, not be swayed and to just find my tribe within it. But it was exactly that model of letting the individual, even if it's one-on-one or group of 5, the group think model. Yes, that's what my daughter's going through in the middle school there. I mean, actually every class is. The testing, the midterm, the final, it's just to see their depth of knowledge. Answer this in a paragraph. And it's not like there's a right answer. They just want to see how deep can you go with your knowledge. Show me your layers of intellect. And it's not like, well, you got that wrong. It's like, I love how you brought that back together. I loved how you shared your thought with me. Like it's critical thinking to the nth degree, and really teaching the child to have a voice and empowering them, and figuring out who they are before they get released into the world. So they don't have to find out the hard way and conform and then feel like they have to break free or numb, or they're starting off with confident feet. That's kind of, I'm watching friends who are in the old systems, and their kids feel so like, yeah, I'm keeping up with the Joneses, but then they're free and they're like, oh, they don't know what to do. So then they get lost and they numb. There's the drugs, the alcohol, the screens, the do what's easy. And you're not trying. They're not putting their best foot forward and trying something new, or thinking that they're just as important as anybody else. It's sometimes easier for children brought up in the old model to get small. That's where they've been trained to feel safe. And it's maybe scary, but it's brave. And it's also the superhuman power is to train, quote unquote, I hate that word, a child to go big, to expand as big as they can with whatever's brimming on the inside that wants to come out, because those are their innate skills trying to come out. And yeah, they've been buried, they've been numbed, they've been suppressed, but no longer. That's my rant.
Exactly. The expression of the individual needs to be unleashed.
Yeah. Yep. Safely, and with mentors who are like, nice unleashing. Way to go. What else you got? Stop unleashing.
Yeah. And giving them an environment where there's the expression, the information, the stimulus to go see. Some kids are just going to be way awesome in music. Some kids are going to be way awesome in arts, in image and painting and sculpting and whatever. Some kids are going to be analytically minded, and you're going, dude, engineering, you might want to look into that. You might find that fascinating.
Yes.
But it's like what Ken talked about there. It's really unleashing and the spirit, the inherent nature, resonance, vibe, the frequency and vibration that makes up that little unique frequency stamp that just dropped into the planet and has a whole lot of life ahead of it.
Yeah.
What does it want to do? What is it naturally attracted to? And that's where learning really begins.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Agreed.
Because you're learning that you're attracted to something. You have an affinity, an interest, some type of attraction to something that you have a different vibe with. And the current system suppresses all that bullshit, or suppresses it as bullshit, because they go, well, no, you can't go color outside the lines, and definitely don't color off the book and off the table and onto the floor.
Yeah.
It's like, well, wait a minute, but that's where all the imagination is.
Even even the segregation side within their system. I love that part in the video when it says separating the subjects and going to different rooms. I love that we have a place where in our one beautiful classroom, we can do a multi-subject task and we cover all aspects. And then you bring in the teamwork element and the support element. Hey, this is my strong suit. I'll do this part. Hey, this is my strong suit. I'll do this part. And you lift each other up and you empower, all just with the common task that can cover it all. Can cover math, science, physics, art, in one beautiful lesson. And that's the schoolhouse I'm working in that my kids are going to, and it's uniquely theirs. But I'm new. You don't often find a middle school class where they're all friends and they're all recognize each other's strengths, and they congratulate them for it. They can, they applaud them for it, and they also seek their peers for assistance. It's quite beautiful, and it expands their mind. I'm noticing that that's expanding the intellect far more than the worksheet or something given to them. The peers are educating each other too. So it's really, yeah.
And then talk about the collective inclusive of individual expression.
Talk about
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. I like, as you said, the inclusion word. I'm triggered. Yes. The expression part is genius. I have to keep falling back on the 8th grade because we're about to fall into it. But just a case in point, like the 8th grade projects, and you might have heard me share in other stories about that. What they do for this program and to graduate is they're starting now. My daughter's starting now in summer, finding a mentor. She's going to be developing a skill set that's new, but it's very interesting and dear to her heart, but it's new to her. And parents are doing this. She has to find the mentor. She has to find the drive and the will and shape her own little program and project through the course of the year, and then may be able to present it to adults, peers, start to finish, what this looked like. She's going to journal it. She's going to check in with her mentor, whether once a week, a few times a month, whatever's working for her. But it's them finding something, I'm really into this. I don't know how to do it, but I'm really into it. Hey, there's an adult who's really good at that. I'm going to ask them if they want to mentor me. And they're doing it all themselves. And it's really juicy. Even when she came to me with her project, I'm like, you want to do what? And Mama Bear's like, oh, my baby. Like, how's she going to do that? I'm going to help. I'm going to jump in. And of course, my avenues are dead ends. And I realized, well, that's a little universal science. She's got to do this herself. And she tapped into all of it herself. And it's bringing out her music, her love of music, her love of sound engineering that I had no idea it would go that route. Her composing and mixing, and then tech, because she's very good at tech. And there are programs out there that I don't know. You've seen me on this stuff. And she's going to learn it start to finish. And her presentation at a hippy dippy unplugged school is going to be sharing tech, saying, look at how useful this is and what it helped me create. And I'm just thrilled to pieces for her. And I've literally been hands off and watching her connect with the mentor. And I did find through my Rolodex, I go, well, I do have this tinfoil friend who runs, thank you, a recording studio in LA, and we get to have a tour so she can see what an engineer looks like out in the real world, but then now see what program she can do at home to do herself, similar to that big $1,000 an hour rental. She can do it. And I'm just over the moon. I'm like, she's just turned 14. So what this could do to her to awaken, like, well, now I can try this. Now I can try that. She can step out into a career. And I mean, to each his own, but this is not a household that is like, well, then you have to go to college and move away and have that experience. I'm going to see where her skill sets develop and what is her next plan of action. We also notice a program here in California, if you go through a charter, which means you do get state funding for your homeschool journey. So you're kind of tapped in, but I mean, I'm a taxpayer and I could use those funds to help my journey. She, at a certain level in high school, they get to go to college and take free courses. So she could graduate high school as a homeschooler with her BA already, or associates, I think, and then go into something that of her choosing, like get those other things, those little requirements out of the way. I went on a tangent there, but I'm noticing at her age, going into 8th grade, without the pressures of the standardized testings and things, she's already exploring an artistic way to creatively develop a career. Just like, I think I was still like picking my nose at 14. Like, I don't know what I was doing there.
You and me both. Now, is this Charlie that helped you with the video?
Yes, she did my intro video with you guys help. Yep.
Right.
That was her. I just opened and I go, she goes, I'll do it on CapCut. I know how to do it. She's like, and I'm like, you're really good at this, Charlie. This might be something to explore. And then she's like, my project. So yeah, that was all her doing.
So basically, if I understand what you just said correctly, let me try to repackage it from my mind and mouth. Basically, you're experiencing the difference, if there is even a difference between the superhuman and normal human with your own daughter.
Yes. Oh, good circle back there. Yeah, as I really do believe everyone is capable of having superhuman abilities. There's just the human interference and programming and yada, yada, yeah, all those things. Whereas I have been not protecting her, but guiding her through a sovereign way of childhood and education and all that. And the results are speaking for themselves. She is creatively and intellectually developing at a pace that I didn't even provide for her. She's doing this herself. She's activating herself. And it had a lot to do with me going, go girl, and finding the right environment for her to be in this place. She does have an educator, a lead educator in her class. She's been with her now this will be her 4th year, the same educator. So she got to know her as well. And it's a safe environment for her to unzip her meat suit or her programming and try things. And I'm noticing that with her peers. Her peers have been developing these projects themselves. I think one fellow wants to make a line of sneakers. So he's getting into manufacturing and just the creative outlets they have. But what I see the most, just at a peer level, is how they support one another. It's in fact, those that are too interested in what they're wearing or the labels they have, it's almost poo-pooed. It's like, what are you doing? Who cares? Are you a bright light or not? Like, it's fascinating and it's exciting. It's exciting because this is just one little place. You spread across the planet. Huge shift. Huge possibilities.
Well, this brings me to one other quick share that I want to use as an example of what I think what we both think is actually a part of the innate human experience, our innate characteristics and nature. And I think we may have looked at this in a previous conversation that we had, but we're just going to play a little clip. This is Carolyn Corey.
Capacity, whereby the brain functions as a whole. Anyone can do this. In fact, without knowing the anatomy of the brain, all you have to do is focus your intent on the center of the brain. And that information is then distributed through the corpus callosum to the 2 hemispheres, which allows you to understand what's going on, and through the endocrine system, which then allows you to feel what is going on. Because the brain is now engaged at its full 100% capacity, you can now perceive and experience things beyond the normal human range, meaning beyond time and space. If this is true, then we should be able to transcend any limitation of our physicality, perhaps even our eyesight. Our first stop is in the UK, where we encounter children who are using blindfolds to access their superhuman abilities. We're going to play some games. Put your blindfolds on for me, please. Ready? Justin, tell me what's on this card.
Teacup.
And now tell me what's on this card.
Tiger.
Isabella, what is the shape and color of this stone?
Kind of like a circle, and it's not really, it's kind of like see-through.
Here's yet another example of how consciousness can interact with the physical world beyond what science claims to be possible.
When we work with the blindfold, it's so that we can encourage the children to use the vision that they have with their higher consciousness.
Evie, tell me the shape and color of the stone.
It's red and kind of a circle.
Yes. Evie, tell me what I'm holding in my hand.
A wooden spoon.
We expand their consciousness beyond that they believe or understand that they can, take them out into universal energies. Okay, now let's go search for that beautiful inner light of yours.
I can see it.
Fantastic. Bring the light out into the area around you, your
I've done
light
it.
field. Good boy. Well
I can
done.
see it.
And then they can work with the higher consciousness, seeing, because they have the potential to see from every cell in their body. Now, you're going to read a line each.
The other dragons were purple with smooth, shiny scales, but Marmaduke was faded orange with sticky out scales.
Excellent. Good girl.
It's like witnessing a miracle. It's really, it's just beautiful to watch.
George was enjoying a quiet evening in the Heavenly Hippos Wildlife Park. Suddenly, he spotted a group of animals creeping past.
The first time I actually saw it for myself, when I come to do my training, the only word I can think of is emotional. It was very emotional.
Pitter-patter. The rain was tapping, and the windows and the wind was banging.
When my son started to read and I saw him reading,
Our day out is ruined.
they kind of shine. It's just amazing.
No mouse would put a paw out in that weather.
Needless to say, I wanted to know what it felt like to experience the physical world through these blindfolds.
Totally dark. Yes. Wow.
Witnessing these incredible children up close got us on a journey to discovering others around the world who are applying similar methodologies to achieve mind-blowing results. At MPUSA in Ogden, Utah, a blindfold technique called Vibra Vision helps you sense the vibration of various objects in the physical world.
All physical matter in the universe is actually a form of energy that's made up of atoms. And those atoms are cycling or vibrating at a certain frequency. Practicing vibrovision gives us the ability to access our sensors and to perceive those vibrations, and then convert it into a usable mental image we call mindsight.
Red, yellow, blue, yellow, orange, blue, green.
We can see the unseen, to do things that are thought of as impossible.
8 of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 5 of hearts. 1, 2, 3.
At MPUSA, folks of all ages demonstrate these incredible skills inside the academy and out in the real world.
How about the grilled chicken and sausage gumbo?
Gumbo. Okay.
How much do they cost again?
To $29.90.
Correct. And Colton, what were you just touching?
These are fan boxes.
All right. What color is that?
That's it.
Let's find the Lay's brand. Old Spice body wash. Very good.
From Utah, we make our way to Stuttgart, Germany. There, children are using a different approach to the methodology and display skills with impeccable accuracy. In the beginning, it felt a bit weird when I was able to see without my eyes, but after a while, you get used to it. I was rather skeptical in the beginning, but once I learned it myself, my reaction was, wow, this really works. I believe much more is possible than we know. Human beings have a lot more skills that they could develop. I also have a granddaughter who learned the skill and bops around with the mask here today. I'm amazed how well it works. Groups around the world are using various techniques to achieve very similar results. I decided to investigate the origin of these methodologies, which led me to InfoVision in Moscow, Russia, and its founder, Mark Komisarov, who discovered blindfold perception 20 years ago.
Постарался создать методику, которая, как мне казалось, могла бы активизировать эту способность.
We developed a methodology that first worked with kids. Then I tried it with a blind kid, and it worked too. Then I tried it with adults, and it turns out the methodology also works with adults. And that is what I've been doing for the past 20 years.
Эту способность у любого.
So what did you think of that,
Love
Heidi?
it. Absolutely love it. So I was just smiling the whole time. Because that's the kind of reality TV I like. Like, that's not, you can't fake that. I don't, because they're, skeptics will be like, oh, they can see. I'm like, no, again, proof is in the pudding. Yeah.
And to me, I mean, a lot of the things that they showed there, people would say, well, those are just superhuman kids, superhuman adults, superhuman whatevers. It's like, no, that's just normal human.
Yes.
And it's a set of circumstances and tests, tools, and techniques to bring out the real super in the normal human.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's exciting. That'd be fun to have that normalized and in the classroom. Really exciting. And I liked at the very end too, they were saying they tried it on a blind person and adult who's already been formed and all the programming and things, but it still can come out. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say I have been on shows where folks have asked, but do you have any psychic kids, or do you know any psychic? And go, yeah, but then I usually segue, but there's several that don't know they are. They all are, and they just don't know it yet. And it's not about playing, a trick and being a psychic or having these things. It's about using it to be confidently stepping into all these different abilities. I mean, that's one skill set, but to be empowered by a skill set such as that, it's going to bring up all these other amazing things. And to imagine moving through life that confidently, that you have that in your back pocket, and knowing that other people you meet can too and do too. It also brings it back to from even our first few minutes why I stepped out of education system and why they're coming after children with medical and, they're affecting parts of their brain so they detach, so that they're afraid of what these children and adults, what folks can do when they develop these skills that everyone has. They're not going to need to work for somebody else. They're not going to need to fit in a box. They're not going to want to, and it's not going to feel comfortable or healthy to do so. So there goes their factory line.
Right?
Yeah. No, I love that documentary from her. I think the last time was when we did that episode with Sherry I saw, but he didn't have that extra clip at the end. Like I saw an extra bit here that I don't remember seeing.
Yeah.
So another required viewing for people.
I think that there's more going on about the great reveal of the knowledge apocalypse. The curated narrative is crap, and it's been uncovered, and that has become the great reveal, which is causing people to have the great rethink, and that's leading to the great reimagining. This is the reality we inhabit. All of the crap that's going on and all the manufactured nonsense and the distractions that are being created by all of these social and political clumps of crap around the conversations and the social fabric are just there meant to distract and to keep people from being able to actually explore the reality of reality, which is what we are seeing, what you and I are talking about here today. There are, if you reclassify or reframe the term superhuman, I would say, going back to our conversation about LeBron and what he does in his skill set, he's kind of superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
You can go, well, he's super in his humanness, of what he does.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But the psychic abilities, the vibrational, the frequency, the sensing abilities,
Mm-hmm.
the power of just the innate nature of consciousness, which is psychic.
Mm-hmm.
We're never in the now. We're always in the next.
Mm-hmm.
We're always thinking of what the next thing is. The now is a frequency stamp that's now put in the memory bank.
Mm-hmm.
The next is where you're engaged. And like what Carolyn did with those kids, with that, I love it. I love the concept of it. The name mindfold. It's not a blindfold, it's a mindfold.
Mindful.
And you're actually unfolding the powers of the mind. So this is, I think, where the conversation needs to be. And I am so grateful for you to come on and have this conversation today. I think it's been exactly what I wanted and even more and expected. So thank you.
That was really fun. I'm excited for these sound bites. Yeah, that was you're the appropriate person to help bring that get that out of me, as well as go on that ride with me, because that was a really fun conversation. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah, and I wrote that link of that whiteboard. I'm going to send that to my parents.
Yeah, I'll send you the link, but it'll also obviously be in the show.
Sure.
When we get it out there so people can enjoy the conversation.
Sure.
Hopefully at least half as much as I enjoyed having it with you today. I'm so grateful, Heidi. Thank you very much for being here and doing it.
Thank you. And thank you for seeing me and recognizing me and, supporting what I do and being like, hey, this deserves a talk. So thank you.
It does. And links to everything about you, where you're at, your YouTube, your Linktree and everything will be in the description. And there's going to be more of these because I think we just kind of went in and scratched the surface a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, and I'll be in the classroom in just a couple of weeks. So I'll keep you up to date with what's going on in there, if I'm trying anything new, what the collective energy is like, and how that's working out.
I think that would be an extremely valuable thing to share because, as we said, there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of confusion and chaos and crap in the conversation of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
But there is reality going on, like we talked about today. There are demonstrable, empirical experiences and data that we can all see and experience for ourselves that is real. It's not story-based, it's reality-based. And that's where we need to spend our time. So,
yes. Thank
Heidi,
you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Nexus, Superhumans or Normal Humans with Heidi Popp. You can find all of the shows, clips, shorts, and even gear at nexusnexcast.com, nexusnexcast.com. If you like what we do, consider supporting us by picking up one of our lifestyle collections, specifically designed with you in mind. Because we all know that when we gotta do our thing, it's nice if you're gonna do it in style. And we think you'll like our style. You'll find The Nexus on all your favorite podcast platform and wherever great podcasts are found. Thanks for joining. Till next time.